Welcome back, everyone, to Bitcoin Core versus Not debate with your host, Tone Vase, and the one and only Jimmy Song. We are back kicking off the brand new year with another episode, and we will have at least one more for you coming up. I kind of wanted to get these done before I head off to El Salvador, where I will be presenting on this topic. And Jimmy, you gonna be in El Salvador for Plan B?
I am. You're going to be at the Plan B forum, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna actually talk about this, my keynote presentation. I really do want to retire from speaking about Bitcoin, but this is the last topic that I am tackling, and then it will be health, longevity, and fitness. That was the last 12 episodes on the channel that I did. Anyway, without any further ado, Jimmy doesn't need an introduction. Our guest does need an introduction. We're going to go ahead and introduce Rearden, and then Jimmy Song is going to give us an update on what's been happening in the world of Knots versus Core since our last episode. And then we're going to start firing away. Please comment in the live chat on either X or YouTube, and we will try to get to your questions. I will keep an eye on the live chat. So without any further ado, let's welcome Rearden to the show. Rearden came recommended to myself by several people as someone that is able to articulate the core position in the core versus Knots debate, because a lot of people are able to articulate the position for Bitcoin Knots, but it's a little more challenging to articulate the position for Bitcoin Core. So Rearden, I'm going to go to screen share. I'm going to pull up your Twitter. And your first time on the show, my audience is not familiar with your work. So feel free to provide details on who you are, what you do, where you're from, if you care to share.
Yeah, sure. So who am I? I'm Rearden, or Rearden Code, Brandon. I've been working full-time in Bitcoin, mostly on self-custody wallet projects for about 8 years at Casa, BitGo, and elsewhere. Probably the biggest success that I've had in the Bitcoin space was that at BitGo, I was part of the team that launched the first ever Taproot script multisig wallet into production. I was also then the lead on the team that launched the first ever production Musig wallet. I worked with Jonas Nick on finalizing the spec for Musig when I was working at BitGo to facilitate that launch. So that's the kind of stuff that I've been doing. And just one thing I want to clear up before we get into the rest of this is, while I agree with Core's actions on this specific kind of current spam topic, let's say, I'm very far from a Core sycophant or anything. I have major issues with them, and I've done rounds of battle with them. Prior to this issue, people would have said that I was one of the Core fighters, because I would fight with them about consensus issues where, since leaving kind of the self-custody wallet, let's say, industry engineer role, I've been trying to trying to facilitate upgrades to Bitcoin to make it more capable for the future. So I've been a Core fighter, and currently I guess I defend Core on this specific topic.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've had a lot of different people on different sides of the divide, and you have like a matrix of people. You can you're obviously pro, Covenant, CTV, or something like that. I think Ellen Hans, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And then there's that axis, and then you have Core. This particular change in the data carrier size, and you could place people in all four quadrants if you make it like a 2x2, and you happen to be in the pro covenants and I guess pro core, which isn't actually rare. It's just like a perspective that we haven't necessarily heard before. So I do agree with you that you have had some issues with core. I think a lot of people have. And it does sort of make for some strange bedfellows, as you're saying.
Let me jump in as well real quick. It automatically goes live on Twitter. So if you guys care to retweet right now our podcast, just go over to my Twitter and just retweet the live stream. It went out to my followers, so that would be great. If everybody watching as well, if you could hit the like button and hit the retweet button, doesn't make sense for me. because it's already there. And go ahead and do that. Okay. So Rearden, so what are you working on now?
Well, I kind of took last year half off because of family health issues. So I'm really just deciding what I'm working on right now. I'm working on becoming a Bitcoin consultant, basically offering services to review wallets. I've done a lot of self-custody wallets, like I said, in multi-sig especially. So hoping to make that a business this year, but if not, we'll see. I don't know.
Okay. And one more thing. After when people found out you were going to be our guest, some people do refer to you as a shitcoiner. Why would that be? Have you worked on any projects that involve shitcoining? And maybe you could address those people real quick before we move on.
So I've never worked on a shitcoin project. The last shitcoin I ever traded any Bitcoin for was NovaCoin, I think in 2014 or 2015. So it's been a decade since I shitcoined. They're referring to the fact that I don't hate ordinals enough. I minted ordinals when inscriptions first came out because I like I like connecting money to myth, let's say, or money to culture. And so I thought it was a valuable use of my time in Bitcoin to inscribe things like the over 9,000 Dragon Ball Z meme, and I was the first to inscribe the roller coaster guy GIF because I think connecting money and myth and culture is very important. So that's why they call me a shitcoiner, is because I've been involved in putting culture onto the blockchain.
Well,
okay.
Do you think ordinals are a shitcoin, or what's your view on that? Because clearly, you when you said the last shitcoin you traded was NovaCoin in 2014, you didn't include like the ordinals that you created and inscriptions that you created or whatever. So, do you consider that to be a shitcoin, or is it part of Bitcoin for you?
I mean, I think it's part of Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin culture represented in images that are just the same way that, Luke has inscribed Bible verses. Well, not inscribed, it wasn't called inscribing back then, or Satoshi embedded the Times headline. Money is indelibly tied to culture through imagery and words. And the same way that people make art out of dollar bills, or they deface dollar bills with slogans or whatever, putting that into Bitcoin, I think it's a natural part of the culture. There are shit coins built on ordinals, which are just shit coins, BRC20s. I've not been involved in those. But that's just like there's a people shit coin everywhere. It doesn't mean that all inscriptions or all ordinals or all uses of that technology are shit coins.
Yeah, and you know what? One of you guys just brought up an interesting point. I remember having one of those stamps that says buy Bitcoin. And we were stamping like dollar bills and $50 bills and $100 bills with them, basically defacing US dollar bills. And ordinals are not that different than like defacing Bitcoin UTXOs, I guess, or transactions.
I wouldn't say that, because they trade at a premium and they're not traded for Bitcoin. They're like $100 bill with a buy Bitcoin thing on it.
The same way that gold jewelry that has art value trades at a premium to bullion, right? Like art and money have always been tied together. It's unavoidable that they will be.
So Jimmy, do you consider ordinal shitcoins?
Yes. I consider inscriptions shitcoins too, especially if you're trading them. It's different than putting a message into the Coinbase transaction than putting something into, creating something and then trading it. I think the moment you start trading it, then it becomes a shitcoin.
I mean, do you feel the same way about
I think what you're arguing, Rearden, is that you made something that you inscribed, didn't trade it, and that's fine, and that's in a sense like a different usage of block space, similar to that. And I get that perspective, but the minute you trade it, it's a shitcoin. That's
why is that? Is it a shitcoin if someone makes a piece of incredibly beautiful gold jewelry and sells it at a premium to the bullion value? If I tie art to Bitcoin culture and I sell it at a premium over the underlying Bitcoin, I don't see how that's a shitcoin. That's just using the medium the same way gold is a medium, Bitcoin is a medium, and you can't avoid that it is a medium. It has certain properties. The moneyness of gold comes from its properties that also make it good jewelry, and the moneyness of Bitcoin also come from its indelibility.
See, I don't buy that, because jewelry has a significant weight in gold. Whereas like an ordinal or whatever, it's like literally like a couple satoshis or whatever the minimum is in order to make it standard. That's it's not the same thing. You're using it as a rail so that you can shitcoin your new central bank. You could make your own new central bank and then go and sell it everywhere. Now, the fact that it hasn't been as successful as, say, Solana meme coins is the only real difference. It didn't have nearly the sort of
I think you're
volume that those
up.
things did. But I mean, they're essentially the same thing. You could create them and make them and do whatever. I mean, BRC20 is not that different, and Omni protocol and I guess counterparty protocol, all of these things, they did essentially the same thing. Like by the argument that you were saying that, oh, it's just the same thing as long as it has Bitcoin value somewhere, the premium is like normal because it's art or whatever. No, I still think rare Pepes are shitcoins. I still think whatever things are on the Omni protocol are shitcoins. But I mean, regardless, I mean, like that's not why we brought you. But
all right,
I can understand I can understand what you're saying. I can understand what they're saying. I'm just telling.
Let me comment on this real quick. So I actually never referred to ordinals as shitcoins. I refer to them as stupid. I refer to them as being ultimately worthless because Satoshis are meant to be fungible. And if ordinals were ever to actually take off, I think there would have been a movement to make Satoshis fungible to just screw it over. So the whole ordinals movement was stupid from the beginning. But I never really thought they were shitcoins because remember, Jimmy, weren't you one of the original people involved in color coins? And how is it different?
And I still think color coins are shitcoins, right? Like that's what they're doing I've told this story before about how Vitalik was involved, and he's like, well, why am I doing this, inefficient color coins thing? I could just go create my own protocol and have like shit, the mother asshole from which all of shitcoins emerge, and that ended up being Ethereum, of course. So
one thing that confuses me here, Jimmy, is you seem to be putting shit tokens and ordinal inscriptions in the same bucket, and like I 100% agree with you with everything that's a token. I think Tether is a shitcoin. I think every
I don't think Tether is a shitcoin at all. I will defend Tether. I don't think it's a shitcoin.
Tether on Bitcoin is a shitcoin because there's no point in putting a centralized currency on a decentralized network. I should clarify that. You're right. Tether.
There is a point in sort of not from a technical perspective. There is from a regulatory perspective, which is what they're using. Yeah.
Anyway, the tokens are shitcoins. Inscriptions are different to me.
I'm going to go in a very different direction. I think it was kind of the fact that the Bitcoin community was so anti-shitcoins. This is probably why Tether ended up on Ethereum to begin with instead of on Bitcoin. I mean, Tether is what
you mean Tron,
Ethereum.
Yeah.
Now it's Tron, right? Because Ethereum transactions got too expensive. But Tether is like literally one of the main things that kept Ethereum going, and is the only thing that's keeping Tron alive. Had Bitcoiners, were more open to Tether on top of Bitcoin, Ethereum and Tron wouldn't exist at all anymore, and Ethereum would be significantly less useful to the world without Tether. So I wish Tether was on top of Bitcoin because then Bitcoin would have captured the value that Ethereum picked up in its market cap from
I don't think that's true.
Utilizing Tether.
I deeply disagree with that. I think Tether has utility. I think that much is very clear. But it being on Bitcoin, increasing Bitcoin's value, I don't think so. I really don't think that's the case. I mean, the fact that they can sort of do some regulatory arbitrage over banks. Banks are highly inefficient. Tether has 50 employees, and they do many multiples of. They're worth many multiples of many banks. It's just they have a technological advantage and a regulatory advantage over banks. That's the main value prop. it's not at all about like the rails that they run on.
But also it's you have no idea how many times like in my life over the last like 6-7 years, people were asking me to like, you know, accept Tether or use Tether, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna own Ethereum. I don't have a wallet that can handle Ethereum. I don't have a wallet that can handle Tron, right? So like I would have loved to utilize Tether in certain situations for simplicity, but I just couldn't because I don't want to own a shitcoin. Anyway, we have to go on to the real topic.
Anyway, we're kind of getting really off the main topic here, and really, so we kind of have an idea of where Rearden is coming from and sort of his position. He's not really like a core sycophant, as he said, and I think I agree with that. And he's also not sort of like a Knott's hater. I don't think you can classify him that way either. So he's somewhere in between, and he's going to explain Core's position for us in a way that I hopefully is not exactly the perspective of someone like Birch, who we had on, and he was sort of saying it from a Core perspective. You're maybe more of a third party than he is, and yeah, we'd love to hear your perspective on you know, the data carrier size, why you think they were right, and how you know, like what's your justification for the increase in the data carrier size by default and all this other stuff that went down.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to get on the air with you guys and talk about it. So I think the biggest thing that I find difficult about the, let's say, the Knott's position and the Core position and all of this is, and Adam Back actually and I have argued about this because he takes a different perspective than I do. So I'll try to say my perspective and then maybe even come back to his and say why mine is different. So my perspective is, I did the math actually a year and a half or 2 years ago. I made a whole spreadsheet calculating for what sizes of data embedding is op return more and less expensive than a witness inscription of some sort. And the crossover is somewhere in the 142 to 146 bytes. It depends on the assumptions you make about transaction sizes and stuff. But the long and short is that the window of sizes for which op return is the most cost-effective, most block space efficient, not block space, block weight efficient to stick some data into Bitcoin is only the window from 0 to 145, let's say, bytes. And so what was fascinating about this whole debate for me was that people on the Knot side were saying, well, Core went from 80 to unlimited or 100 kilobytes by moving it up to the transaction size limit in the relay policy. But what they really did was they just said, this limit is ineffective because it's unrelated. It doesn't do the thing we needed it to before. We wanted it before to stop larger amounts of data from being embedded in Bitcoin. But people are already embedding much larger data in inscriptions, and there's therefore no purpose to this limit anymore because the highest that it makes sense economically for someone to use this for is 145 bytes. And so it wasn't an increase to 100 kilobytes. It was an increase to 145 bytes. And I think if we'd had that conversation from the very beginning, we never would have had the same level of vitriol because it's not the same, 80 to 100 kilobytes, that's a massive change. But 80 to 145 is basically a nothing burger. So Adam, I think he said when he was on the show with you guys, that Core made a tactical error in uncapping it versus just putting it 155. Make it something bigger than the economic high limit, but not so big that it scares people because people see that change of taking out the limit entirely and they get upset about it. I don't think that was a strategic error in the same way that Adam does, because I think that people who are commenting on this expose themselves as technically ignorant when they talk about the 80 to 100 kilobyte change. And you can tell who is technically intelligent because they'll talk about the 80 to 145 change, because that's the effective change that was made. Everything in Bitcoin is economics, and economics drive that no one is going to use op return except for, super weird one-off weird stuff they might do because they want to just stick it to the man for more than 145 bytes because it's cheaper to use an inscription for anything more than 145 bytes.
Okay, all right. So I want to stop you right there because I think that this is a very important point that you're making, is that 145 is the optimum based on an economic calculation of block weight. Is that correct?
Right. If you want to put more than 145 bytes of data, you're better off.
It's more efficient to put it into the witness field, right? This is the economic incentive argument that you are making. And it's interesting that you call it technically ignorant, because your argument is very much an economic one, right? And it's under the assumption that the economic optimum is what everyone creates transactions using. Is that correct?
It's not in everyone. I think that's a wrong statement. It's that
on average, maybe
will not do more expensive things if there's a cheaper thing they can do.
Okay, so your argument then is that if there's a cheaper thing that they can do, that they won't do it because of the economic incentive. I just want to make this clear, because you said it's people being technically incompetent when the argument that you're making is an economic incentive one.
Right. Because I just want to make that clear. Ignorant because they don't understand the costs of op return versus witness data. That's why I'm saying
the costs that bakes into the assumption that it's an economic incentive only that drives the size of the op return. Is that right?
Not only, but Bitcoin is a system of incentives. And if economic incentives do not drive behavior, Bitcoin cannot work. Miners won't mine,
but what you're saying is that the economic incentive is what drives everybody to do these things. And you're calling the people that are questioning that assumption technically incompetent. I just want to make that clear.
No. You're misunderstanding me.
Okay, what are you saying then?
Because people who are questioning, people who are upset about Core increasing the limit from 80 to 100 kilobytes are technically ignorant, because they don't understand the difference in cost between those two things. They're saying Core raised this limit to 100 kilobytes, and that's going to break Bitcoin because now there's going to be more data. And they don't understand that more data can already be put in the witness, right? So people who are saying that are technically
right. So we've had a lot of people that are pronouns on the show. I think they all understand. Almost all of them have said you can put more things into witness, both sides, right? Adam, we've had Mechanic, we've had Luke, we've had Merch. Everybody has said, yeah, it's cheaper to put it into the witness. That's not up to debate. What you seem to be saying is that all those people on the not side, the people that disagree with you, are actually they're not saying that at all. That and Tony and I have talked to a lot of people on this. They've all said, yeah, it's cheaper to put it into the witness. But why are you opening this window? It's not, hey, you know what? It's actually cheaper to put it into op return. We haven't had a single person say that. Like, it's more about, why are we opening this window past 145 or whatever it is, 160 or whatever it is, when there's no need to do that, right? Like that's the main. And what what you seem to be doing, or at least if I were on the not side, what I would say is, Rearden, you seem to be kind of strawmanning this, because that is not what they said, right? They're not saying it's cheaper to put it into op return. No one has said that, but that's what you're saying that they're saying, which is exactly what a strawman is.
They're not saying it's cheaper, but they're saying things like what you just said, which is Core blew open this limit to 100 kilobytes. Why did we open this window? Why did we open up this vulnerability? They've even said, by opening up 100 kilobytes here, right? And that's a technically ignorant thing to say.
How's that technically ignorant? Please.
Because it reflects a lack of understanding of how Bitcoin fundamentally works. There are massive areas of vulnerability in Bitcoin for people who don't act according to economic incentives. And we let those things be there. The Great Consensus Cleanup is an example of closing up some of these things. And we haven't panicked to close these things up, because we understand that Bitcoin is a system of incentives. And if there's no incentive to attack these vulnerabilities that we know exist in the Bitcoin protocol, then they won't be attacked.
All right, give me an example so people can understand. So what vulnerabilities are you talking about specifically?
Yeah, the biggest single one is the possibility for DOS blocks. This is a term I think popularized by Portland Hoddle. The idea here is that you can make a series of transactions using legacy script pub keys that will take many minutes, possibly as much as half an hour, maybe even an hour, to validate on consumer hardware in a block, and basically take down major parts of the Bitcoin network with a block that's a valid Bitcoin block. But people don't do this because it's economically irrational to do so. But you could take down most of the Bitcoin network for an hour, possibly even permanently, because they wouldn't necessarily recover. It might crash their node with a block that's a valid Bitcoin block.
Okay, I hadn't heard this before. So you're saying there's a script that you can put in that gets unlocked that takes over an hour to, or over, I don't know, 20 minutes to run on consumer hardware, that would obviously make the thing hang, and whatever subsequent blocks they won't be able to validate. You're saying that exists right now?
Yeah.
And that, okay, I personally haven't heard of this, but I would think that there could be an economic incentive to go make this, right? You could just short
that's
Bitcoin.
why consensus cleanup is trying to close that hole. So the point here is that there's no rule about Bitcoin that says it is right to try and prevent things that are kind of not harmful, that are disincentivized anyway, right? Bitcoin is a system of economics. And so if you say we opened up this massive hole by changing the relay policy, that means you're technically ignorant, because the hole was already there, because someone could already go to a miner, as you know, of course. You guys have talked about that ad infinitum on this show. They could already go to a miner and get the thing mined anyway. The relay policy didn't stop that. So the hole was already there in consensus. We see that it wasn't being used anyway, even though people could do it. So there's clearly not a major economic incentive to do it. And so there's no new hole being opened up. And the cost of someone using this hole is that blocks become smaller and easier to validate. And so this is why I'm saying it's like technically ignorant. People are saying, oh, this is a vulnerability, but there's no harm to this vulnerability being used, right? What's the harm of this? What's the harm of putting 100 kilobyte op return in? It's faster for my node to validate it. My Bitcoin usage just got cheaper. I use less electricity, and my IBD goes faster. So like, it actually helps my node. The more people do big op returns. If anything, I should be encouraging it as a user of Bitcoin, because it makes my node more efficient. So that's what I'm saying about the technical ignorance, is that
again
op returns reduce the cost of Bitcoin running.
You keep calling it technical ignorance, but to me, these are all economic arguments, right? And there are differences.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to see where you're coming from.
Not and specifically around incentives, which I think are a lot more subtle than you make it seem. And the way that that I would characterize this particular 80 to 100K versus 80 to 160 is that you're unnecessarily opening up a door, whereas the case that you were talking about with the great consensus cleanup is closing a door. You want to close as many of the vulnerabilities as you can, right? I mean, it's better to have to be less vulnerable than to be more vulnerable.
Absolutely.
So to add vulnerability in terms of spam, right?
Great.
And again, this is an economic argument, not a technical one. I want to emphasize that. Where if you're adding 100,000 bytes, you're correct on a technical basis that your node isn't. It's not 100,000 bytes in op return versus 100,000 bytes worth of I don't know, 100 transactions or something like that would be easier to validate because there's no signatures and so on. But the whole point is that the people that are on the side of saying, hey, this is a vulnerability, they don't have the economic perspective that you do, which is that any data in the blockchain essentially is fine, right? And you sort of, you alluded to this when we were discussing ordinals and inscriptions and so on. And for them, the monetary use case is the most important. And if you add all of this other stuff, then it's essentially spamming the blockchain, which they don't want, right? And that's the thing. It's an economic difference and not a technical one. And this is where I want to drill down into your objection that this is a technically ignorant thing rather than an economic belief difference.
Yeah. Well, it's both. You're right. I kind of accept your point there that it's both. And so the technical side is the idea that more, quote, spam is in some way harmful to Bitcoin, and it's going to cause the network to be less usable for the thing that they think is so important. And this, but then to your point, we have to look at the economic reality of making Bitcoin transactions, which is that it is unavoidably the case that the people who are willing to pay the most to make Bitcoin transactions are the ones who are going to do their transactions, and those who are not willing to pay won't get to make their transactions, right? Bitcoin block space is limited. The number of people that can make a transaction in any given minute is limited. And so the people that are willing to pay will make the transactions. And if you're not willing to pay, then you clearly don't see very much value in the Bitcoin transaction. So here's the economic argument, right? If you're afraid that op returns, which are 4 times more expensive than inscriptions, people are 4 times more willing to pay for op return data than you are willing to pay for making transactions, then you believe Bitcoin to be a failed system, and that's the economic situation. So either Bitcoin is going to be successful, which means that transactional data will absolutely, in all but the most rare cases, price out op returns, and probably in all but the most almost as rare cases, price out inscriptions. In which case, it doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. There's no vulnerability here because the data won't be used anyway. It's just cleaning up the code and getting rid of useless filtering that didn't do anything. Or you believe that Bitcoin is so worthless as an economic system that the value of making Bitcoin transactions is so low that nobody is going to pay enough to price out inscriptions and op returns. And to me, of course, it is completely obvious that Bitcoin transactions are one of the most valuable things ever created, and that the ability to move data in a decentralized, censorship resistant way across the planet, money, which is data, that's the most valuable thing created in my lifetime, possibly. So that's obvious to me. So I can't imagine how someone would be afraid that inscriptions or op returns are going to price out that incredibly valuable resource.
Again, I think you're sort of framing things in a very specific way. Specifically, you're saying, okay, well, if I'm trying to get in a transaction and this ordinal is there, that's the only inconvenience that op returns or whatever has. And it's totally not, right? Because I'm a node runner, right? I have data, and I'd rather these things not be there, especially if they're dick butts or whatever, right? Like these things that I don't think have any economic value to the Bitcoin system. So the big thing here for me is that your argument rests on, okay, if you're just like sort of if you're trying to get in a transaction, you're essentially telling people, well, you should be willing to pay more than whatever the ordinals people are doing. And that, or op return people, or whatever use cases anyone might ever make for op return, you should be willing to pay more for. And of course, we don't know what those might be, and we have no idea how people might use these things. And this is really the thing that I think is the big difference in sort of the perspective there, is that for the people that are saying, well, it's no big deal, it's going to go away, and that witness is cheaper, you don't really know what all the use cases for op return might be, and you have no idea how they might get used or in what way they might subvert the monetary use case of Bitcoin. And that's you might say we know all of these, or
you were doing well.
Say, I mean, like that's really the thing, is that can you really say that this is not a vulnerability for all future possible use cases of op return?
This is not a vulnerability.
That
so vulnerability means something
this
specific.
Is always going to be okay, that people will always be willing to pay more, and that all this data will not affect your node. I mean, like, of course, there's a 4 megabyte
with 100%
limit with respect to all of that, but that's I think the key point.
All right, I'm gonna move on. We're gonna continue with the word vulnerability, right? Because
yes, thank you.
Something did occur with the release of Core v30, which is giving the Knots people, more ammo in their, for their fire. And that is the release of Core version 30 did create a slight vulnerability, though it may not be that slight for some people. And even though this particular a vulnerability did exist in prior versions, it was the release of Core v30 that actually made it occur for at least one user where their wallet.dat file was deleted. Jimmy, maybe you could technically slightly give us like a better overview of what happened, and we can discuss this as a topic because it's definitely comes up at comments as proof as to how incompetent Core is, and that Core needs to be forked out. Or Rearden, one of you guys, give us some more.
I'll start, and then Rearden can fill in
Yeah.
some of the details. I think he's familiar with this as well. So basically, there's a particular upgrade path for the Bitcoin Core wallet, and that's all of the wallet data is in this file called wallet.dat, and that has been the case since pretty much the beginning of the reference client. It's always been that there's a wallet.dat. And whenever you change things up, there's like sort of an upgrade on the wallet.dat and various things. And Core v30 upgraded some part of the wallet. And so whenever you have that, you have to whenever you upgrade the core client and the wallet as well, you have to upgrade the wallet.dat. And apparently there has always been some sort of delete path where they'll delete the wallet.dat file, but it didn't trigger in most cases. And in this particular one, some user found a particular case where the wallet.dat file would be deleted. Thankfully, they had some sort of backup, so they reported the thing, and they did responsibly disclose it, as you can see in the bitcoincore.org. That's where this is. But yeah, essentially in a particular case where we're not entirely sure how often this would occur, because we don't really have data around that stuff, like how many people run wallets from 0.13 or whatever it is that would be affected. But there is a path under Bitcoin which will delete wallet.dat files, and this it does get hit in certain cases. Now, like from a technical perspective, that's kind of bad, right? Like you shouldn't ever delete wallet.dat. You should at least back it up somewhere so that you can restore it or something. But so that seems a little bit kind of clumsy from a programming perspective, and I do agree with that part. But as far as I can tell, it really doesn't affect that many wallets, and it has to be a very particular upgrade path that would cause this. I don't know, Rearden, if you have anything particular to say regarding that. But I mean, obviously, if you had one of these wallets and didn't have a backup, and this happened, it would be devastating to you, and and that would be horrible. But like I also don't want to make it sound like everybody that had a wallet.dat file, had it deleted when they upgraded to Core 30. It's just, from a technical perspective, you could argue that this was both not very frequent, but also kind of a bad thing to have in the code path.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Just to put color on it, like you're right, I agree with you, pretty much everything you said. To add a little color, the delete path was there to remove files that had been created in the process of the migration that had failed. So it's when a wallet migration has failed, the wallet software is trying to delete the files that were created in the process of the failed migration. So that's just why the delete code is there. Just its color, like I'm not defending it because the delete was overbroad, and that's how we ended up in the situation. It deletes the whole wallet directory in a certain case. Specifically, if the wallet being migrated that fails to migrate didn't have a name, which refers to particular very old wallets. So if the wallet being migrated didn't have a name, then this delete path can delete the whole wallet's directory, and that's how you end up in this bad situation. So that little bit of color, and then the other little tiny bit of color to add is just that this does not happen if the wallet being migrated was, and I think you kind of said this, but I want to make sure it's clear, was a relatively recent wallet. So this is only for very old wallets that the user had for a long time and that have no name, which of course, as you said, could lead to devastating loss of funds, because someone who has a wallet that old, it could be recovering from some old hard drive with 100,000 Bitcoin on it or something ridiculous. but it is uncommon, and it is now patched, and they responsibly took down the versions that could trigger this bug. So they think they handled it pretty well, but as you said, the code really shouldn't have been there. There shouldn't have been the possibility for that delete path to delete anything other than exactly the files that had been created in the failed migration.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
Let's quickly stay with this, right? Because again, the argument from the knots side is that you see this is proof how incompetent core is and why we need to fork core out of existence. They're destroying Bitcoin. And my argument against it is, how do you know that the people that would replace core are going to be more competent, more transparent, and more responsible? Because everything I have ever seen from any shitcoin development project is they don't disclose anything. They hide everything under the rug. Like Bitcoin Core so far has been the most transparent developer team, as far as I know, I've ever seen for any project in the world. And it's very hard to compete with something that has up to this point been as transparent as they are. And the reason why so many people, including at the moment 10 to 15% of all Bitcoiners, are hating on Core so much is because they have so much information due to Core's transparency. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're largely correct that this is a very transparent project. I know that they take vulnerabilities very seriously. They assign vulnerability CVE numbers to things that they consider to be serious, and they have responsible disclosure things and things like that. I mean, to me, this is the sort of bug that happens after a while, and it gets uncovered when some confluence of things happen. I like a lot of bugs in software just sort of hide for a while, and unless you have amazing testing and amazing like really good QA team and things like that, it's really hard to uncover all of these bugs, right? Like that's not how software is done. And I've been on the end of bugs like this where, I'm the last one to touch it, but it was a confluence of like 7 different people's check-ins of code that, cumulatively caused like a major bug rather than any one incompetent person. Now, could this have been a lot better? Yeah, but that's just kind of what Bitrot is. Bitrot is, right? Like you kind of have that a little bit. Is it possible to have a better process and everything else? Absolutely. I think core people would be the first to tell you that their process can be better, that they can have better testing, that they can do all of this stuff in a better way. And I think they have that that sort of weight on them, right? They realize this is a lot of money for a lot of people, especially people that use the core wallet and stuff. And sometimes bad things happen, and it might be the current developer team, but it's at least in this case, it seems like it's is small things that have accumulated over many years, and that's that means that you have to kind of go back in time and say, okay, well, you have to have had a really good development team the entire time to sort of like prevent something like this from happening. So I mean, it would be better if there were better processes and that you had it from 15 years ago. But like, you can't really change the past like that. And if you do have something like Knots, remember, Knots is mostly a fork of core, right? A lot of the latent bugs and things like that are in Knots too, probably.
Yeah, well, that's what Knots found, is that the same latent issue existed, but the latest trigger from V30 wasn't there. Yeah. So that's
that's going to be the case. You have like sort of accumulated like a lot. To be fair, it's very good code, right? Like there's a lot of consensus stuff that you get if you're forking core and so on. But you also adopt some, like part of the trade-off is that you also get some of the aged cruft that might be there that hasn't been fully tested, or code paths that haven't been fully used properly and or fully explored properly, and so on. So this is why people like doing entirely new versions of code and so on, because they want to get rid of some of the old stuff. But there's also benefits to using hardened code, which is, I think, the correct way to go personally. Like, if it's lasted 15 years, there's a pretty good chance a lot of it has been hardened. There still might be code paths like the one that ended up deleting the wallet directory, but a lot of that stuff kind of gets found over the years. And also, but that's not to say it isn't there, but like it tends to be a lot more hardened the more it's been used in the wild. So I get the sort of like scoring points off the fact that this bug happened. And I honestly can't blame them for sort of gloating a little bit on that. But I kind of agree with you, Tone. It's
and I'm having
it's
like a deja vu moment. Remember when Matt Corello was blamed for potentially causing the inflation bug right in the middle of the big blocker debate with Bitcoin Cash? It's like the same exact thing.
Yeah, and that was and I wrote a long article on that, right? And the accumulation of like 3 or 4 different pull requests that actually ended up that Matt ended up triggering with his particular one. It was a confluence of things. It was like 4 different people that did different things that didn't know about each other, and it was more sort of like an interaction bug than anything else. So those things happen, especially when you have lots of different contributors to a project and they don't necessarily know what the other one's doing, or when you're touching code that somebody else wrote and you don't really understand like what something has happened. Code review is supposed to catch a lot of that. Unfortunately, with Matt's change, he didn't get that much code review, it looks like. But that sometimes happens, and and this is where like a good process is very important. And I honestly, this is one of the reasons why we've been talking about this particular change with the op return. Was it really didn't seem like it was considered in a deep way, because initially the idea was, let's remove this option entirely, right? And let's not give them any way to set it below an unlimited amount. And then they backed off of that and then changed it to, all right, let's default to 100,000 bytes and let's call it deprecated. And then they backed off of that and said, all right, let's leave the option in and undeprecate it. And the position that a lot of the people on the core side have been defending is the very last one, where it's no longer deprecated and it's still an option going forward. But really, like, if you saw from the beginning, like what they were doing, they should really, I mean, if they were being courageous and manly, then they would defend the very first thing that they wanted to get through, right? And that to me is a little bit.
This is great because I'm actually someone who would defend that very first thing.
Okay.
Actually, for the reason of exactly what we were just talking about. The Bitcoin Core project is I think overbroad project, because in Satoshi's original vision, if you guys recall, he had a poker client half written into it as well, and so he had built a monolith of software that did way too much. And frankly, I would say Bitcoin Core still does way too much by having a wallet and having some of the other features that are not kind of the consensus and the peer-to-peer. And so I would say that removing as much as possible of this kind of, I'll use a word that'll trigger some people here on purpose, this useless relay filtering code would be the right direction to go. Every place, I think this is a factually, technically true statement. Every single place where there is a divergence between the relay rules for the Bitcoin network and the consensus rules for Bitcoin blocks is a bug. And so deleting this rule, this op return limit rule, is one way to reduce the number of bugs in the code in a concrete way, and to reduce, therefore, the possibilities for new weird bugs that are because we have a divergence between consensus and relay policy. So I firmly think Core made the wrong move by softening it. They should have gone with just deleting the code that even made it possible to limit that field.
All right, so let me ask you a question because originally we had Satoshi Dice back in, I think it was 2012 or 2013. One set outputs, huge
I used to
amount.
be friends with the guy who wrote that.
Right, right. I mean, what Eric Voorhees? I think it was
No,
that made.
Fire Duck. Voorhees
Okay,
bought it
right,
from Fire Duck.
right, right. So, so he made all of this stuff, and they you know, the filtering rule was put in as a way to stop all these one Satoshi outputs, which were, you know,
That's
at
incorrect.
that time
So,
considered spam, and a lot of
no,
people did that,
that's
and it caused the Satoshi Dice to no longer have you know, such a significant part of the network. Would you have been opposed to that, or would you have been like for just allowing them to continue?
so. I think Satoshi Dice should have been allowed to continue. There's no. It's hard to know for sure exactly what caused Satoshi Dice to kind of die off. Whether it was the relay filtering rules that were added or changed. I shouldn't say added; they were changed. Whether relay filtering in some way affected Satoshi Dice, or if it was just the network becoming busier and there was just less space for the transactions. The guy who wrote it, like I said, I know him. Used to be friends with him. He turned into a bit of a B casher, so I think I offended him at one point, and we're not friends anymore. Because he was one of the people who would argue that basically Bitcoin should have unlimited block size. So anyway, I guess the point here is I don't know what exactly caused Satoshi Dice to stop being as popular as it was. I don't know if it was relay filtering or not, but regardless, let's say it was the relay filtering at the time that did that, the network was very different then. You know, Bitcoin was used by a few thousand people maybe back when Satoshi Dice was a thing, and so there wasn't competition for block space. There wasn't mining pools with private submission. There wasn't mempool accelerate. There wasn't slipstream. Any of these things. And so in a very different world back then, with a few thousand people doing all the relaying and all the mining, then yeah, a relay rule that all the miners apply, that'll stop something, right? But we know we have absolute concrete factual evidence that we don't live in that world anymore. The facts are that if people want to do something now and it's legal in consensus, they just do it. They don't care whether you try to filter it or not. And so today, I can say with absolute certainty that every place where there's a divergence between relay and consensus, it's a bug. That may not have been the case 10 or 12 years ago, but today I'm confident in that statement.
Well, I mean, that's kind of assuming minor centralization, though, right? Like, do you want decentralization or not? Like, because in a sense, the slipstream works because you have pools that you can submit that stuff to, and those pools give the template to their hashers. So if it was something like Stratum V2 or Datum, and
Jimmy,
individual people got to decide, then relay rules start mattering, right?
No. You've got it backwards. You've got it totally backwards. If you have centralization, then you can get the miners to enforce some kind of relay rules that are stricter than consensus. If mining is decentralized, I guarantee you that people are mostly going to be permissive in their relay rules because they want to get the most value out of the transactions that they're mining. And it takes only a tiny fraction, we're talking a couple percentage points of the network to relay something for it to get to any miner who wants it. Because we have centralized mining, it is possible to restrict transactions.
Well, so we know about the percolation threshold. If you have an average of about 10 connections, then the percolation threshold is somewhere around 10%. So it's not a couple percentage points. It is in the case when you're centralized.
But that research was based on bullshit because they assume 10 connections, but me and Jameson and Portland Hoddle and like a dozen other people all run tens of thousands of connections. We connect to everyone on the network. So it takes just a few of us to relay every transaction. So if everyone has 10 connections, it takes 10%.
Yeah. I mean,
the real network.
But like if I'm running a node and I'm mining, maybe I have more connections than that. But the percolation threshold depends on the number of connections that you make. We know this.
But
I don't know if
everyone.
And depending on the network topology, it might be 8%, it might be 12%. We don't know, right?
It's like
that, and that's
it's 5 nodes, and we know this for a fact because we've tested it. Right? There are people out there, myself included, who run nodes that connect to almost every other node on the entire network on well-resourced machines. And that guarantees that if any of us accept these transactions, they get to every single miner.
Well, so you're saying you're connected to my node, which I have 10 connections. You're one of those 10 is what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that because there are these large nodes, anybody who starts up a node can basically be guaranteed to get one of us, and then their transaction gets to everyone else.
Okay, so you're saying one of my 10 connections is you, Portland
One of
Hoddle,
us,
Jameson Law.
not necessarily me, but one of me or Jameson or Portland Hoddle or there's a
Okay, I mean,
handful of us
I'd like to see research that shows that, or I mean, we could do a
tested
random
it.
sample.
Substat Summer proved this, right?
Hmm?
Substat Summer, there were like 5 nodes that were allowing substat transactions, and they relayed in tests. Just anybody could broadcast a substat transaction and get it mined, right? So
right, but I mean, but that was because the mining pools are known, and you can just like relay it to
but it
them,
wasn't a
and they're
direct
the ones
connection.
willing to.
You could start up a brand new node and relay substat. People tested it, right? The facts are that demonstrably new nodes can get anything that any of the large nodes relay to any miner. And it was proven in Substat Summer.
Well, you can get it to the centralized miner. I don't think you can get it to every node. I mean that seems a little too much. I mean we can talk about that and get into the technical details, but there is I have a node with 10 connections. I find it a little bit like not that believable that one of those 10 is you, Portland, or Jameson. I don't know. I can go, I guess, look up the addresses, but you can also test this by doing asking for peers for any particular node and see if your 3 IP, I don't know, maybe you use multiple IP addresses and spoof many nodes or whatever. But I mean, if it's one of your 3, then I mean, I think this should be testable, right? Like,
oh yeah, you can check.
You can probably figure it out, right? Because you're saying it's connected. Your 3 nodes are connected to everybody in the network, and that you're very permissive. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that one of the 10 connections that I have on my node is yours.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'd like to see someone prove that.
Anyway, the point is that this whole filtering debate is massively asymmetrical because Substat Summer proved it, and those of us who kind of
I don't think it proved it. I think it proved that it got to the miners. I don't know if it got to my node certainly didn't know about a lot of stuff.
It doesn't matter if it gets to the non-miner nodes. It only matters if it gets to the miner nodes.
But I'm a miner node. I have a bit-axe, right? Like
okay, great.
Right? like you're saying, and the thing is, in a decentralized mining world, that those are the people that are mining, right? Are people that are at home and so on. And what Substat Summer proved was that all those transactions got to the central, like the 90% of the network that are pools that use standard templates or whatever, and not datum or stratum v2. If you really want to get to all of the nodes in a decentralized context in a future that we all hope for, I hope you want a decentralized mining system, then those assumptions no longer hold. Or am I missing something here?
It's still an asymmetric thing.
It is. I agree with that, but what you are saying is
fraction of well-connected nodes to a guarantee relay. No matter how decentralized mining is, maybe it goes up all the way to 1% from 3 people, but it takes a tiny fraction of nodes to get a transaction that is consensus valid to every mining node who is willing to accept it. And so the more decentralized mining is, the harder it is for any kind of relay filtering to restrict transactions from blocks, because miners are profit maximizing.
Well, again, that's an economic statement. What you're saying is every miner is profit maximizing for the short term,
aggregate,
for the next block, rather than, hey, this is for the long-term health of Bitcoin. There are other calculations if you're also making that.
Okay, right. So now there's I wanted to get this earlier, and Tone brought us to a different topic, but this is a really important topic. What exactly can anyone say is the long-term negative consequence of large op returns or inscriptions? Because that is the thing. You're right. If miners truly believed that large op returns or inscriptions would damage the long-term success of Bitcoin, that could change the economics. You're absolutely right. So can you, in precise language, say what is the potential even for long-term harm from op return or inscriptions?
Well, I would say that if it's non-monetary and those spam the network, then first of all, it makes nodes more expensive to run, right?
That's false.
Yeah, we debated this on multiple shows. I'm
No,
also on the side. This is false. I've been debating.
No.
This
If you
with
have
you.
a non-full block and you add more op returns, that's more computation, right?
No,
And that's more disk space.
I mean,
am I right?
if you have a non-full block, look, if Bitcoin has
if you have a non-full
blocks,
block, that's
if
the
Bitcoin
question
has
I'm asking.
non-full blocks in 5 years, I'm gonna quit and live on a farm. Like Bitcoin is dead if there are non-full blocks in 5 years.
Okay,
Like the system
I
has
might hold
failed.
you to
Blocks
that because
cannot not
I'm
be
sure
full.
at one point or another in 5 years there might be non-full blocks. I mean, like
that's a bug. That's because some miner, like, they lost their connection temporarily and didn't fill the block with something. It's not because there was not
arc and
connections.
lightning and everything scales really well and you don't need that many.
But if that's
I mean,
the
it's
case,
entirely
if that's the case,
possible.
then the security budget people are right. If that happens, the security budget people are right, and Bitcoin's a dead system. If blocks are not full in 5 years, Bitcoin is dead. It's a failed system.
Again, an economic claim that you're asserting with sort of a technical lens.
I would give it more like 10 more years.
Oh, fine. Yes, you're right.
I wouldn't say
being
5,
extreme.
but yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on it as well.
I think it's entirely possible you have L2 systems that are so efficient that you still have non-full blocks.
Well, this is an argument that actually has been made in other blockchains, and like the question is, and frankly, God, I'm gonna punch myself when I say this, but this is a place where I think Paul Storks is correct. Okay, because Paul will say that one of the benefits of drive chains is that it properly aggregates the L2 transaction value to the base layer, and other L2s don't. And so if it's the case that L2s are so efficient that they take the demand away from Bitcoin block space, again, I think we have to do a dramatic rethink of the entire system if we're going to be successful in the long run. I don't think that's the case. I think that all the L2s being proposed, Lightning, Arc, BitVM, even fucking drive chains, they actually all do aggregate the transaction value back to the base layer, and there will be full blocks just managing channels and managing Arc pools. But if it's not the case, it's a messed up situation.
Well, let me also jump in on this. If the blocks, if what you say is true, and L2s do create a bunch of empty block space, now what? Are we all going to be running ordinals? Like all of a sudden, ordinals and these rare sats are becoming useful, right? To keep Bitcoin alive?
Yes.
Are we going to flip our views at that point? Like,
no. Well, so here's what I'm saying is, I think I expect it to be full for some amount of time, empty sometimes, full other times, and this is the pattern that we've seen in Bitcoin. Is 2017 we had blocks that were so full that they had more fees than the block reward, right? And back then it was 12 and a half, and we had blocks that had 13, not from some mistaken transaction, but from the accumulation of all the transaction fees that were there. But then Lightning came along; it relieved a lot of the fee pressure, and then we had full blocks again at some point with a lot of the ordinal stuff. But that those went away, and we have less full blocks again. It comes in waves this happens in any technology, is that you have pricing pressure that gives incentive to innovate at other areas of the supply chain of whatever it is, right? So you might have energy that's very difficult to produce by using wood to burn it, but then somebody figures out you can go mine coal, and then somebody else figures out that you can go and drill for oil or something like that, and each time that causes like a rejiggering, and you get sort of like a different market each time. And I think that's the case with Bitcoin fees. I'm not saying that it's going to be empty half empty the entire time, but you get new layers that give you like 6 months, a year of time when maybe there's not as much demand for block space and so on. So
I think you're wrong, but even let's assume your premise. I'll assume your premise for the moment, because it's going to be the more efficient way to have the conversation. Assuming your premise, again, you said about your node being more expensive to run because of ordinals or op returns, let's say. On the one hand, that's a true statement in that if nothing else was going to fill that space, then validating an op return, which is incredibly cheap, basically as close to free as you can possibly get for validating some data. Like we're talking probably 15 CPU cycles total to validate an op return creation. I don't know exactly, but it's tiny. Op return is basically free. An inscription's a little more expensive because you have to have you have to reveal an inscription, you have to have a signature typically, although it's not strictly required. There usually is one. So inscription's more expensive, op returns incredibly cheap. There's some cost to validating these. However, I think it's reasonable to guess that in the presence of op returns and inscriptions using up some block space, that keeps a tiny bit of baseline fee pressure, keeps floor fees from going to zero essentially. And so therefore it probably disincentivizes some other transaction that probably be more any other use of block space, not probably, any other use of block space than op returns or inscriptions is more expensive than op returns or inscriptions. So to the degree that they disincentivize any other transaction in that low fee period, they're reducing the cost of running a node still.
But if they were, other ones would have got, again, like right now we have like half empty blocks and so on, then each one of those that you add is more that you're adding for people to have to validate and so on. It's not that they're preventing others, at least at the current moment. And we're in an era of
we have half empty blocks. No, we've got a stack of blocks going back dozens of blocks. That's not true.
I mean, but
we've had brief periods of half empty blocks, but in general, blocks have been full with very low fee things. And so in that scenario of blocks that are full but very low fee, the existence of inscriptions and op returns reduces the total validation cost of blocks, because otherwise people would be doing transactions that are more expensive, like consolidations.
You have an empty 1.5 that might be just like and minor or whatever. But I mean, I believe there have been some empty one or like half empty ones in the last couple weeks. I mean, there's one right there. Like you had one from that one, and I believe that might be one where they don't accept subset or something like that. There's another one right there. There seems to be a significant number of them. So a lot of these might be useless inscription crap or whatever, right? That's sort of like picking up stuff.
Anyway, I think it's important to put in context that yes, there is a tiny, let's say, cost in some cases when there would otherwise be empty blocks, but these are the cheapest things to validate of all the things you could put in blocks. They're the cheapest things.
But
so I think
it's still additive to whatever I would have otherwise had, right? Like so, and the other thing is that on the one hand, you're arguing that anyone that wants to can get it in, provided that they pay enough fees, right? Like, so if you're submitting to whoever, now if you add a little bit more friction to those, then they are less incentivized to, or they have to pay more, and you're costing them more, and so on. That's exactly what relay stuff is. It's adding more friction. Now, if what you say is true, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here, if your three nodes, you, Jameson, and Portland Hodl, can get anything out onto the network that you want to anybody that will receive it. In that case, you've reduced friction significantly. But the main argument is that before that there was more friction. Now you might be the ones that are sort of like supercharging sort of spam transactions so that they can get out to whoever they want. In which case, that's entirely your right to do. And that's that is something. And nodes that accept you obviously are acting on their own, of their own volition, connecting to you, and that's entirely fine. But if you have more friction, then it costs more, right? Like that has always been sort of the argument around the relay filters.
Right. So I think this is we're really getting down to the like center of this whole conversation, which is this conversation actually goes back way farther, and much of it actually was things supported by people that are now on the NOTS camp. So if you kind of throw your mind back to the mempool full RBF equals true argument that happened, I think 3 years ago now, let's say, There,
I think Libre Relay was made for that, right?
for that,
Like,
right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I supported Peter Todd in creating it, and I was one of the first Libre Relay nodes other than his. So if we kind of cast our minds back to that, what was being said really with mempool for RBF equals 1 is that fundamentally all consensus valid transactions will be mined, and that's a future thing, or was a future thing. But Peter Todd, myself, and others have made that a present thing through deliberate action on the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin Relay Network is and the mempool are a PvP environment. And it takes just a couple of people like myself and Peter Todd and others that I've mentioned to change the nature of that network such that everything consensus valid can be mined. We have done that. We have disabled the function of relay policy outside of the very narrow things of preventing DOS of local nodes and maybe, because of the incentive alignment, maybe preventing the abuse of upgrade hooks. But every other use of relay filtering has been disabled by the deliberate action of people on the network. So there is simply no function for what Notch is trying to do. It's not a thing you can do anymore because of the deliberate action of people on the network.
Well, so the what I think a Knots person would say is that essentially when you have preferential peering and whatever, obviously you're familiar with what happened with Garbage Man and so on, is that if you have these actors that are sort of speed running the transaction to the miners, right, the centralized mining pools, which was essentially what Libre Relay was doing, then in a decentralized context, not like when 90% of the network is in centralized pools, that the asymmetry is enormous, right? Like you were saying, you only need like a couple percent. But in a decentralized context, it's still asymmetric. I think it's probably 90-10 at least, and probably maybe even like 95-5, something like that.
So Garbage Man was exactly why I started running as many connections as I do, because I was like, well, Garbage Man can't slow me down if I just connect to every node.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, but again,
wait, let's back up. Can someone please explain what Garbage Man is?
So Garbage Man was a node pretending to be a Libre Relay node that would actually not relay what Libre Relay wanted them to relay. So Libre Relay was created by Peter Todd for RBF, and then later repurposed to do large op returns, and then subsats, and I forget what else. But there's a whole bunch of transactions that would get caught in relay filters that Libre Relay was very permissive on. And from what I understand, they connected to a lot of the large mining pools directly, so that it would make it. And they use something called preferential peering, where they would want to connect to other Libre Relay nodes, number one, and then allow all of these transactions to sort of get around all of the relay filters in the other part of the network that had them. So essentially, it got all these transactions over to the main ones. Garbage Man was a way to sort of like try to disrupt that by taking up slots in a Libre Relay node, right? Like you have connections to it, so you take up slots pretending to be Libre Relay, and then there were mitigations against that. I think Libre Relay like did a little test with each node claiming to be Libre Relay by sending it a transaction.
That was never made part of Libre Relay. There was StuTXO made TX Pigeon, I think, that did those tests, but never became part of Libre Relay.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, there was some sort of test to see if it's actually a real Libre Relay node, and then there was like some other way to like there was all sorts of like tit for tat kind of stuff going on between those two. But anyway, Garbage Man was an attempt to sort of like mitigate against that. Now, I'm not saying that this asymmetry would ever reverse or whatever, but I do think it's if 90% of the network agrees on that, hey, this is maybe not worth.
So all I've been, so I think what many of us have said from the very beginning is, look, if this is something that, let's say 90% of Bitcoin economic weight, let's say, thinks is bad, then we should absolutely be making a consensus change to stop it. And the main message from me, at least, has been that relay policy is simply not a method that you can have any effect here. And this is going to bring us to the topic of BIP 110, of course, which is great because we need to get there. So yeah, you can't change this with relay policy, because I absolutely guarantee that me and my friends can defeat anything you do with relay policy and get it to every mining node on the network. I guarantee it. I promise you, because I will expend significant resources to make that true.
I think you're assuming that the rest of the network stays static. There are mitigations on mitigations and things like that. And
as you said, it's
you can have peering.
I have personally enough resources to guarantee that any consensus valid transaction gets to any miner who wants it. I will make that. And
it might be that the miners themselves don't want it, right? Like at which point.
So then there's another question of, can you stop the miners from mining it, which is like another piece of this. So the point
no. The miners themselves might think, hey, this is spam. I don't want it on the network.
Right. If miners don't want the fees, that's another question. And so now we get into, again, the economics is, will miners indeed mine any profitable transaction? And
some do. No doubt, like Mara does, for example. But there are other entities that don't, right? Like, and actually even Mara, they stopped mining anything between below half sat per VByte.
Right. Miners are finding what's the profitable threshold, and I think that's great. Like that's from a Bitcoin's future success perspective, miners kind of playing with that threshold and picking what they want to mine, what feels profitable to them and is worth any kind of propagation delays. Like, that's what should be happening. I hope more miners get technical enough to do that kind of thing. That's great. Anyway, so the point though is that the message has been, I guarantee that there are humans out there who will defeat any kind of relay blockage. If we want to change the behavior of the network, it must be done through consensus, and it must go through the consensus process to find a change that can have the intended effect without breaking the rest of the system. And so that's been the message of, it's not that we're saying spam is great and I want BRC fucking 20s on Bitcoin. Nobody wants BRC 20s on Bitcoin, except Asians apparently. And I say that with two Asians on the call.
Well, I mean, but if you're relaying them, aren't you kind of like helping them out, right? Like if you're the one saying, okay, I'll take any consensus valid transaction, including BRC20, and send them to all the miners.
BRC20s are tiny. There's nothing I can do to block them. They're freaking. I could put the relay filter at like 80 bytes and it would not block BRC20s.
Right. But if you had a filter for it and the rest of the network had it, and you're one of the ones that is propagating it, then you would be.
Yeah. So I think what you're seeing from me here is that I look very long, distant future. I'm trying to make Bitcoin the best for my kids and their kids. I don't care about right now. I care about that Bitcoin should be resilient. And in the long term, it is not an effective system if it requires relay policy to work. It's only effective if consensus policy, consensus rules are what maintain the functionality of the system. So let's make a consensus change.
I respect that. I respect that. And I think a lot of people would say, well, this system can always be subverted by a tiny minority, and therefore we should have consensus rules instead. And this is exactly where BIP 110 comes in. And Tone, you didn't put this into the show thing, but this definitely is becoming a thing. It used to be called BIP 444, but it got assigned number 110. So that's now the big thing.
What is it now? We are going to talk about that. So what is the new attempt to fork?
It's called BIP 110, and I believe it's like a user activated soft fork.
Okay, what is the? Let's jump into that. There are a few other topics I do want to cover. BIP 110, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another attempt at a soft fork. What, like, how much shit did they put into this one? And what's the status of it? Who wants to go first?
As far as I can tell, a bunch of the Knots people are talking, are actually for it, I guess. The guy that I believe released client 3 for their client release today, if I'm not mistaken, and I expect sort of like a production ready one to come out any day now. Usually when you're putting out a release candidate, that's like, hey, we're almost ready. So if that does come out, then I suspect some people will run it. And once you have a conflict, then you have a fork. So yeah.
What did they add into it besides lowering the app return limit? Like
There's a bunch of other
what
stuff.
other what
All
other
the
forks did they stick into this thing?
all the inscription stuff, all of the stuff that they talked about in 444, all the sort of like spammy things, they're forking out from a consensus perspective. So they're saying these are no longer valid as part of the soft fork. It's tightening the rules and saying these specific things that we think are spam will no longer be allowed onto the chain. And I mean, I suspect, Rearden, that though you may not agree with the specifics, you're essentially saying that if you do want to prevent spam, that this sort of consensus approach is maybe the way to go. I don't know. I don't want to speak for you. So why don't you opine on it?
If there is a way to prevent spam, it must be done through consensus. And now, I personally don't think there is such a way, but I am actively happy to help find out. This way is the one. BIP 110 is not a good way. I'm not open to this particular BIP, but I want people to keep making proposals, and I'm happy to review them, and I'll give my feedback on any of them, because I think it's the only productive way to do this is through consensus.
So when is their user activated soft fork set to is expected to take effect? I really want it to be March 18, but is there a date?
So I think that would be the earliest possible activation. I think the signaling starts in the beginning of February, and then it could lock in and activate. Oh no, it couldn't activate that early. It could lock in by March 18th, but it wouldn't activate until some months later.
So it'll fail by March 18th. Like we'll know when it fails.
The first signaling period. I think the signaling goes all the way through September.
Yeah, so it could last a long time. Like it's like any software proposal. You have a window of time to get enough people, enough miners to signal that they're ready.
Okay. I can't see any miner signaling for this insanity. Can you?
Well, if it's a decentralized context, then there could be people, right? Like so,
like any
if
miner,
all you have to do is find one block and
some ocean miner might.
Oh, some ocean miner might, yeah, but then they'll just get forked off the network, right?
No, you're just signaling for it at the beginning.
Now, because it's a UASF, there is a date at which I believe they have locked in on time true. Is that right, Jimmy?
That's what we guess so. I think yeah, there were big BIP 9 people, right? Or
yeah, so the thing that has lock in on time is true, which means that there is a point where nodes running this client would start enforcing it even if no miners signaled. So that's really the drop dead date, if you will. So if we see a bunch of nodes running this and we're getting close to that lock-in date, then we could see a fork, a split.
Yeah, and whoever is signaling it for it beforehand would, like, that percentage is what you would expect on September 1st, right? Like, or whenever the timeout runs out.
So who would you envision would be signaling for this, right? Because, like, I don't want to speak for Rearden either, but in your opinion, am I accurate to say any miner that signals for this is basically kind of incompetent, and it's usually someone with a bit axe? Like, do you envision any?
Well, like, you might signal for it, but not mine it after. So like that's entirely like a game theoretically possible thing to do, and it might actually even be rational in some contexts.
Oh, so for miners, in order to trick like stupid miners to try and follow this fork?
No. It's just I support this, but only if it's going to be the majority or something like that, and then like walk back on September 1st. That's entirely. Like it might be that
miners could just signal to be jerks. I mean, like there's nothing. This is similar to the relay situation. Like this is a PvP network. It's not like we're all friends, right? The miners could signal in order to get other miners to fork themselves off, but then not actually run the client.
No, or they might be signaling to see if there's a majority, and then if it's not a majority, then they might pull back. In which case they're like, we want to, like their signal might be, we want to go with the majority. And if there is a majority, we'll go. And
All right.
that's
Okay,
a perfectly
to
rational
be,
thing
to
to
be
do.
fair,
Let me-
on
let
this
me rephrase the
specific
question.
fork proposal, I would say very few are going to signal, even for any of these reasons, because this one is in particular so against the general Bitcoin ethos throughout time to this point. I can imagine there being a reduced version of this that maybe just caps op returns or something that might get a much greater level of signaling. But this one, I don't think is going to go anywhere personally.
Right. Let me rephrase the question then. Other than miners that are trolling, other than miners that are trying to get other stupid miners to fall for this, is there any rational reason a miner with, real hashing power, like mining 1 block a week, right? For a miner that knows for a fact they are going to find 1 block per week or more, is there any rational reason why they would want to follow this fork?
Well, so here's how things shake out from a game theory perspective. If you think a majority are going to go in one direction, then it's in your interest probably to go with them, right? Like, and this is where I think miners are way less ideological than you think. If a majority are going anywhere, then they'll just sort of go follow them, the economic majority, that is. And if they're not, then they won't. And it doesn't matter what the arguments on either side are. If you want to make money, that ends up being
Sure,
the case.
Jimmy.
So that would be the rational reason if
I agree with you.
if they perceive that their majority is on that side.
Right.
Now, are there miners that will think that, or they have a different calculation based on sort of the asymmetry of a soft fork? I don't know. Like maybe the threshold isn't 50%. Maybe the threshold is less because of the ability to overtake the other chain in the case of a fork, because of the soft fork asymmetry. If you're in the minority, even if you have like 33%, but then it slowly increases to like 60, and then you overtake the other chain gets wiped out, right? And that's the advantage that the soft fork side has. So it's entirely possible that at a threshold of like 25%, enough miners join that you kind of get past the tipping point or something. And I think to some degree this is what the bit 110 advocates are kind of counting on, is that they do have that wipeout advantage, unless core does something, in which case then you have like a permanent fork of the two or something like that, and at that point you have two different coins. So it's a little tricky, and that asymmetry may be something that a lot of miners take into account. And it's hard to say because the game theory gets very tricky very quick, and you don't know what moves that the other side might do. And if you can kind of predict it, then you might do one thing. If you can't, then you might do something else. It gets very complicated very fast.
Does this still have the temporary soft fork semantics, or did they kill that off?
Nope, I think they still. It
No,
looks
it's
like
temporary.
they still have it.
There's no one is going to run this thing, because this thing guarantees the need for essentially a hard fork at some time down the road, and the possibility of trying to fight that battle. No miner is going to run this with, like Jimmy said, with more than a block a week. There's not the risks of something like this are just far too high. If this was a plain soft fork that just cut op returns, I could totally see the wipeout effect causing people to actually go this direction. Like that's a plausible thing. But this, as it is, there's no way. No one's gonna run.
It might not be, but like if you get even a little momentum, I could see it kind of getting there. I
love your optimism.
The thing is, the advantage is definitely on the soft forker side in terms of, even with a minority, you might be able to get to a majority very quickly just because of the way the game theory works out. Now, it's in the interest of people to sort of like have it all go one way or the other, just because then you don't have to think too much about it, and there's less sort of disruption and so on. But who knows? Like it's very difficult to say. And this is where like I kind of wish the UASF back in 2017 actually triggered. Because then we would have seen how this sort of thing plays out. Because we don't really know. We haven't seen this before, and that's where I'm a little hesitant to say, well, no one's going to run this, and there's no way this is going to succeed, because we don't know. We just haven't seen this.
On this, Jimmy, you and I see eye to
because
eye.
it's once you get a little bit of momentum, it's entirely possible, right?
I've said this about
a very
Cat,
strange
I've said this about
situation.
CTV as well.
I'm not sure.
So let me throw another question out there, and this is where this podcast is going to go over the next few episodes. Do these Bitcoin nuts people realize how dangerous this shit is that they're playing with? Like, I give them less than a 1% chance of success, but success means the destruction of Bitcoin, right? Like, do they realize what the fuck they're doing?
Well, is it the destruction of Bitcoin? What are you expecting that you would say that it would destroy Bitcoin? Because I don't know the result. I have no idea how.
It would be a complete.
I feel very comfortable saying that because we haven't seen
exactly.
This.
So why do you want to?
Well, I mean, for one, every time we've had like very uncertain events, I mean, the block size one in 2017 was a big one. It actually was very good for Bitcoin because we proved that we can survive that sort of like corporation attack.
But it was worth it.
Like this is one of those things where I have no idea what the result might be. It might be good for Bitcoin, it might not be. I don't know.
I have a pretty damn good idea. In 2017, it was worth it, right? Because in 2017, you and I did podcasts every freaking day. We were confident that if the big blockers won, decentralization starts to die. So it was absolutely worth it to take the chance and stop it. This time around, these people are looking to do something more dangerous than what we attempted to do in 2017 over fucking spam that is supposed to decentralize the network instead of centralize it like the big blockers tried to do.
Well, I don't know. Like this is the big thing. We really don't know a lot about like what the future might hold on this stuff and what happens if one party wins or the other. I genuinely have no clue. Like, because this is one of those things where we haven't seen it play out. We don't know how things are going to shake out and who goes where and what happened. Like it's just I get the sort of like we don't know and we're risking things. I'm not even sure what the risk is, right? Like, do people just stop using Bitcoin if like one side wins or the other?
No, I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm sure there are some people that will like on one side or the other, but
the risk is loss of confidence in the Bitcoin network, crashing the price by 70, 80%. Personally, I would like to avoid that, but some people clearly don't care.
I mean, that was a risk in 2017.
Right, but the risk was worth it in 2017. The risk was worth it in 2017 because the 2017, the other side would have centralized Bitcoin, and also in 2017, Bitcoin value on chain was smaller, so it was less of an economic force around the world. It was very different. It was a lot. This was a lot safer in 2017 to do. Rearden, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, whether it's safe or unsafe, like I don't have a model for risk valuation here, right? Like here is what will like you can say with some sort of declarative statement, if we do this, then this will happen. And I'm not sure I would believe you unless you give me very, very, very good reasons for that. And I'm not sure there's massive loss of confidence. We thought that would happen with like the big blockers and Bcash and all that stuff before. I don't know if you remember, we had a whole bunch of people on our shows, right? Like, hey, we can't split. There's no way that Bitcoin will survive. Everyone will be confused. There's Bitcoin 1 and Bitcoin 2 and all this other stuff. And then it actually like went up in price like crazy from that day on August 1st, 2017. It was like $2,500 that day up until December when it went to like 19,000, right? Like it was one of the greatest bull markets.
And I expect it to happen again when when BIP 110 or whatever they're going to rename it later on fails. The same shit is going to happen again.
Okay. I want to throw something in here.
I genuinely don't know what's going to happen.
Rearden
That's
speak.
the thing.
Let's get Rearden back in here.
Yeah.
I will say, Tone, I'm much less worried than you are. Like, but as you guys have seen throughout this conversation, I'm a big believer in kind of the economic rationality of the aggregates, not of everyone, Jimmy, but of the aggregates. And so I think the reality is that if this BIP 110 goes forward, what that will mean is that I am deeply wrong about what the economic value of the system is based on, because I think the economic value of the system is based on open entry and kind of clear, predictable rules and a few other things like that. And BIP 110 kind of reduces the level of open entry and also makes more ambiguous the rules for transactions. So I don't think BIP 110 will go forward. But if it does go forward, it's a soft fork. It does not. It's a modestly, let's say, confiscatory soft fork. And so I think one of Bitcoin's values also has been that it never confiscates coins that are valid coins someone already has. But if it goes forward, that will mean that I'm wrong about what gives Bitcoin economic value, and the value will accrue then to that new network. And I will have been wrong, and I'm okay with being wrong. I think for this reason, I'm basically a soft fork maximalist. I want to see more proposed soft forks. I want to see people finding out, as Jimmy was saying, like we don't know what would have happened if the UASF had gone forward. I want to see more people doing soft forks, finding out, discovering what has the economic value by experimentation. Propose a soft fork, run the client, see what happens. No one's going to run most of them, but maybe one of them people do run, and that becomes Bitcoin, and the value accrues to those. And of course, the beautiful thing is that those of us who are hodlers can keep holding our coins and kind of wait for the dust to settle and cash in on whatever ones end up having any value. So I think this is kind of a beautiful thing. Like I said, I wish this one was better. I think this one is so bad that literally nobody's going to run it. But if it was better, that'd be cool.
Well, so would you support like a CTV UASF or something like that?
Yeah,
like
I
I know you've been like or
I'd
LN
run
Hands or whatever
I'd run CTV. I'd probably run Cat. I'd run the tap script opcode soft fork. I'd run great consensus cleanup. I'd run great script restoration. I'd run all of these things. I'm a fork maximalist. I want
everything except
BIP
110. Yeah. Yeah, I can see your perspective. I'm not entirely sure I agree with you, and I'm not even sure what I would do in a lot of these situations, because again, it's like an individual calculation that each person has to make, and that's ultimately what makes Bitcoin is that it is a decentralized network, and your node gets a say, and you control your own node, and your node is Bitcoin to you. So it's, but yeah, I like. Maybe you're right. Like maybe we do need like 40 different soft forks, and use all those bits in the version field to signal, right? Like we have 29 that we can do at once. I don't know, but yeah, that's the sort of thing that we haven't done a lot of. And maybe in a truly decentralized network, we would have 29 different software proposals that are going at once and sort of competing and trying to see what people would do. I don't know. I could definitely see the argument for that.
All right. Jesus Christ. Gary Garrettson, and I know you're a friend of mine. This is factually incorrect. I don't know how many fucking times we've already explained this. The question is, if op return starts getting filled with spam, it could make the chain entirely too large for any normal person to spin up a node. It is literally the opposite of that. It will make your node easier to spin up. Jimmy and I do slightly debate on this topic, but it will not make it harder for you to spin up a node.
The largest block full of op returns
is 1 megabyte. It depends on whether or not it's filling empty space or if it's filling like space that would have otherwise gone to a lower price transaction.
Like, if it's all op returns, the biggest it can be is 1 megabyte, and it's basically a free 1 megabyte to validate. Mm-hmm. Like compared to a block full of regular SegWit transactions, it's incredibly cheap and small.
Right. If it's replaced by other transactions, then it is cheaper. If it's not replaced by other transactions, then it's a little more expensive. But regardless, there is a 4 megabyte SegWit limit, and that's in the case of very strange inscription, whatever. But that's always there's a block size limit for that reason, so that it doesn't grow unbounded. And Bitcoin devs have been comfortable with that limit for a long time, and thinking that that's something that a normal node can handle. 4 megabyte. On average, about 2 megabytes every 10 minutes.
All right, let's take care of some fun. Rearden, the whole CSAM argument. You want to shut that down in a few minutes? I'm so tired of it, but it's still happening.
Yeah, I really try to steer away from that whole topic, but in short, Bitcoin is not a content network. Bitcoin nodes do not recognize any kind of content other than transactional updates to the ledger. And so if you're concerned that someone is putting weird stuff in the encoding of their transactions, just don't run software other than a Bitcoin node. A Bitcoin node only processes transactional updates to the Bitcoin ledger. That is its only function. And a wallet, I guess. But that's but the point is that it doesn't see anything else in the data. So just don't run anything else. If other people decode certain data in a certain way from some people's weirdly structured transactions, that's their problem. And they could go to jail for that shit. But don't do that, okay? So don't run the ORD client. Don't expose a web server on the ORD client without filtering. Don't do those things. The Bitcoin node only has transactional updates to the ledger. That's all it can do. So there's just no other content in there unless people run other specialized software to transform it into that content.
Any comments, Jimmy?
You know my position on this. I've said basically what Rearden has said. I don't think contiguity matters. I mean, you're going to need specialized software to look at it, and I don't think you're liable if you don't have that software.
Perfect.
On the computer, so. But I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't
know. Okay, now let's talk about. Also, was briefly mentioned in the beginning. Now, even though I guess I am defending this the current status quo of version 30, I'm not a fan of core maintainers myself, right? Like Rearden, you mentioned you've butted heads with them on many times. I'm currently not happy with the core developers either. Doesn't mean I want to throw them all under a bus. But so Rearden, how would you like to see Bitcoin Core get restructured without the craziness of soft forking? Like what is your perfect future for Bitcoin development? And maybe if people, instead of trying to get rid of core, were a little more, helping to change it instead of replacing it, what would you like to see happen?
That's a great question. I actually really appreciate it. So one thing that I noticed, and I have said several times to others, is that the core team currently, the most active members of the core team are pretty young folks who don't have kind of industry software development experience. I think Jimmy, you were a professional software engineer at one point, yeah, as was I. And most of the core maintainers were not, and I think that's a real challenge for the organization. Now they just added a new maintainer, the Charlatan, who was. So I think they're actually moving in the right direction of basically bringing in people who have industry software development experience and can kind of bring that perspective to how to maintain the software, maybe even how to avoid things like this wallet bug. So I think that's the biggest thing the biggest single thing I'd want to see is the maintainers being people with industry experience.
Can we back up? Was one of the 5 maintainers just replaced? Did I miss that?
No, they added a 6th. They added a 6th. His name is the
Oh!
Well, there's some rumors that one of them is going to take a sabbatical or something.
All right. So for the moment, they added a 6th, but someone may take a break. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I
So was Tone right again? Then 3 months ago, I said core needs to be reformed from within, and maybe it's happening?
I don't know if that's
I think the Charlatan's a great guy, though. I think he is a good addition. He brings he brings a more industry seasoned perspective to the team that they need. So it is a good move.
Okay, that's moving in the right direction. All right, what else?
Yeah, I don't know much about the new
and then
guy, so
the other
I
big
can't
thing
really
that
comment.
I would say is that core has intentionally stepped back from, let's say, Bitcoin as a system leadership. They lead the development of the client, but they have intentionally abdicated the role of leading the development of the protocol. So right now there is simply no organization that says, hey, we have some kind of a rough consensus meeting structure where we discuss the direction for the Bitcoin protocol. And if I were in charge of core, I would say bring in seasoned software developers and then add to your kind of missions as the core team, shepherding the protocol forward, in terms of even things like great consensus cleanup, right? There's not somebody, a core maintainer, who is shepherding that. It's some other contributor, and 1.0 in this case. So yeah, those are the two things that I would change: is seasoned industry people and leading the system and the protocol, not just the software.
Anything else? Oh, you good?
That's all I have.
Okay.
Did you want to talk about the hacker or
Yeah,
something?
I guess. Yeah, let's bring it up real quick. I do have another question. So speaking of the core maintainers, who I don't have that much, again, for all the reasons you mentioned, their experience and their left-wing bias, I don't have a lot, and their history of what they've done in the space. Let's not name specific names. And one of them recently got their Twitter hacked on top of it. And based on what that Twitter handle was tweeting out, it could have been seen as, you know what, based on this person's history, maybe she wasn't hacked. Maybe that's actually her tweeting out a bunch of Solana stuff. Just comment real quick on getting your Twitter hacked.
I mean, I think she just got unlucky. There's probably it sounded, at least from the GitHub. Yeah, the like, from reading this, that she wasn't tricked or anything, that somebody just called Twitter and pretended to be her, maybe knew her birthday or something like that, and managed to get access to her account, and she still hasn't gotten it back. That seems to be what happened. I think unless you have like your Twitter account like super locked down and you're paying them and stuff, you're probably vulnerable to something like this. And the reason we have to remember, the reason why accounts like hers get hacked, it's because there's a lot of scams that go around it. Specifically, these accounts go and message random people and say, hey, I have a deal for you. You have to send me 1 Bitcoin and I'll give you 2, something like that. And a lot of people fall for it. And there's it's unfortunate, but a lot of imitation accounts do the same thing. Hers has the verification check mark, so obviously it's more valuable for that sort of thing. So, there's an economic incentive there to go hack her account, and she unfortunately lost that lottery, I guess, in getting hacked. I suspect a lot of other people could also have been gotten hacked, maybe even some core devs. But I mean, this is kind of what happens when you have a centralized platform. That's why I think she should be on Nostr and not
the
Twitter.
bit of color I would say there is that most likely it was easier for the attacker to social engineer into her account because she wasn't active leading up to it. If she had been posting her regular self regularly, she would have had active sessions that would have made it harder for her to harder for the attacker to social engineer into her account. So definitely risky to follow people on X who are, and trust anyone who's been inactive for a while if they come back suddenly.
Yeah, and other core devs have done the same thing. I don't think Peter Woola has an account anymore. Orion was inactive for a very long time. I think, yeah, it might be that account might be active again. I don't know, but there are several accounts that are like that. So,
hey guys, what's
careful.
the website to see like which nodes are being run the most? I can't seem to find it. Like they break it
I
down
thought.
by country here, but they don't break it down by which type of node, knots versus core v30.
What do you mean? It was at the
No, I
top.
know, but that's cumulative. It's not like I want to see how many knots nodes versus core v30 nodes.
Oh,
Clark
Clark
Moody,
Moody,
that was the site. That's right.
dashboard.
That's right.
Yeah. It's clarkmoody1word.com. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So if you,
right here on the right.
Yeah. So you want to blow that up a little bit, Control plus or whatever.
The whole page.
Yeah, so you can see it bigger because it's hardly visible, and you got to scroll all the way to the right.
There we go. All right.
Yeah, there you go. Core 30 is 3980, knots is 3331, and then you got a bunch of. That's interesting. That's core 30 0, especially given the wallet thing. They took down the binary, but I guess people are still running it. Or I don't know, maybe it's still advertised.
Well, I'm still running 30.0.
30.2
is already
would make more
out.
sense.
I don't even see 30.1. Did everybody just skip that?
I don't think a lot of people upgraded from 30.0 to 30.1.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between these knots nodes?
The last 4 digits are the date that they were released. So yeah, the 1110 is the latest.
Okay, so if we add them up, there are more knots than core v30. Because if you add this one and that one, you get about just under 18. And now we're adding 13 and a half plus
33, 31. Yeah.
So at the moment, knots is so 13 and a half plus 3. That
I don't Rearden, do you know if they backported the op return thing to 29.3 or 29.2? I don't remember.
I
guess we could just check. Let me go to GitHub.
Okay, so now we're gonna do some controversial short answer with Rearden. I think we're gonna wrap this up in about 10 minutes. So on the last show with Parker Lewis, we got into a minor debate of what is a pleb and are some nodes more valuable than other nodes? And people get really upset, right? And the thing is, and it's weird. Like I replied to someone in a comment, right? Like I believe that some nodes are more valuable than other nodes because today any idiot can run a fucking node, right? Like they don't even need to know what they're doing. They can just buy it in a box and plug it into a wall, right? So I do believe that some nodes matter more than others. And people that really don't know what they're doing seem to be the most upset that I don't think that their node matters. But here's the thing, right? They're getting upset at me for saying their node doesn't matter. Why are you getting upset? Bitcoin is a decentralized network. Why do you care if I care that your node doesn't matter, right? So what are your thoughts on this?
No, I would say every node matters to the degree that it validates transactions that are economically valuable to people. And so the more transactions that are validated by that node, that are valued by the people using that node, the more valuable that node is. So my node is very valuable to me because it validates my transactions, but I don't have that much Bitcoin, so it's not that valuable in the grand scheme of things. So yes, I agree with you that nodes are specifically valuable because it matters if that node is being used to validate incoming transactions that matter to people.
Right. So to me, I agree with you, right? Like the most useful thing your node does is to validate transaction. It's kind of like if someone is giving you $100 bill, but you don't have a way to check if it's real or fake. And exactly, you have a pen. It's not as good as a machine that would actually the machine counter that actually spots fake bills. So yes, it's useful from that front, right? Every single person should run a node for the primary reason of validating their own transactions. And that's what keeps, Bitcoin a decentralized network. But from the perspective of your node, just because you run a node, you think your vote as to what Bitcoin is equally as important as some, major economic nodes or people that actually code Bitcoin. Like some nodes are just more valuable because the people running those nodes are more valuable because they're more important to keeping Bitcoin decentralized into the future. And for some reason, it's very controversial when I say it because, again, going back to any idiot can buy a device and plug it into a wall and run a node.
Yeah, I mean, your node is valuable, like in this aggregate way, where if there were to be something that was existential to Bitcoin, if there was, let's say, a fork proposed, a hard fork, or even a soft fork, let's say, let's say there was a soft fork that proposed like a brand new extension block with 300 megabyte blocks, right? So a soft fork with gigameg blocks. If that were proposed and that was existential to Bitcoin, then the aggregate actions of the node runners in refusing to accept those gigameg blocks, which is a hard fork then against that soft fork, very risky, but in the extremity, the nodes are all valuable. Every node rejecting those blocks is valuable, but it's only in that very specialized situation when you're rejecting blocks to enforce the ability for miners to mine, to enforce against the ability for miners to get value out of those blocks. But it takes massive action. It has to be so bad that everyone's going to run that rejecting node. So in an extremity, all nodes are valuable, but not in general voting purposes, as you said.
Well, it's a little bit like voting, right? Most of the time, your vote matters not. In fact, almost all of the time. Once you get a block of votes, right? If you have 10,000 votes, that starts to matter a little bit. Most of the time, that still doesn't matter. If you get a pool of 100,000 votes, okay, now that starts really mattering, and that's it's a little bit like that with nodes, in the sense that like a single node doesn't really matter. A pool of nodes starts to matter, and a large pool of nodes starts to matter a lot. And it's like when that starts mattering more or less, or that's very hard to say because it's a continuum and it depends on a lot of other factors, like
I
how
think the
large
important
the
thing is
rest of
it
the
only
network is
matters
and who's connected to
in the
whom.
context of a fork.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I can vote about which software or anything like that. Like it's, if there's a fork on the table, then sufficient nodes start to matter. But otherwise,
Yeah, well, so that in a fork scenario, certainly, I would even argue that in a decentralized mining scenario where transactions are getting to the particular miners that want them and so on, like that starts to matter. Now, it's not necessarily a small number that will matter. I think it has to be a fairly large number.
So let's talk about whether nodes matter or not. I am on the record as saying 20% of the network running knots don't matter. Rearden, they don't do anything. These nodes don't do anything. They're a flag. They're a Ukraine flag, a Palestinian flag, an Israeli flag. Like pick your flag, stick it on your Twitter handle, and that's what running a knot node does. Am I wrong?
No, I agree. It's pronouns in bio.
I mean, is that so bad? Like having a
it's not.
500 thing? Like,
here's where it's bad.
I mean, like it's like someone wants to.
Here's where it's bad. Here's where it's bad, right? It's bad because this is 20% of the network. Well, I think some of these people are running like thousands of nodes, but so I don't really think it's 20% of the network, but it's probably at least 10% of the network in reality. So 10% of the network is running NOTs nodes, basically virtue signaling that they're stopping spam. What percentage of these people actually know that these nodes are virtue signaling versus actually believe that they're stopping spam? And I'm afraid that the majority actually believe that they're stopping spam, but in reality, they're virtue signaling, and they just don't know.
I really don't think that's why they're running knots. I think they're running knots to like the Ukrainian flag. It's like, hey, I want to I want to express my displeasure against what Core has done. That's what I think running knots has.
And I think the majority of them think they're actually stopping spam.
I really don't think so. I don't know. Maybe you're running into different people than me, but I've been at different meetups around the world, and a lot of these rooms are split 50-50 or even a little more in favor of knots. And I'll talk to them, and they're like, yeah, it's like I'm just not happy with what Core is doing, and that's why I'm running it. But I don't know. Maybe you're running into different people than me, but that's what
Rearden, what are your thoughts on this?
No, I think. Let's see.
Do you think the majority of people running knots know that it's virtue signaling, or do you actually think they're stopping spam? Did they think that they're stopping spam?
Early on, I think it was more stopping spam. I think it's shifted in the direction of just virtue signaling. I think the understanding with substat summer and other things going on has shown that it does not change spam at all, and that like even large numbers don't. And that's so it's turned into virtue signaling. But I think it started out as trying to stop spam.
I don't think they were trying to, but I think it's always been sort of like a signal. Hey, we don't like what Core is doing, but that might be my impression. I just based on the people that I've talked to. But
right, so I actually agree. I also don't like what Core is doing, though I don't have a problem with this particular change, and I think Rearden and I are on the same page. Like I also don't agree with Core. And maybe Core underestimated, the backlash that they would get for making this change. But I really don't see a big deal in this op return thing at all.
I mean, I can kind of see it. Like it's been a controversial thing for a very long time, and
well, it's a socially big deal.
People are talking about it with the Omni stuff, right? Like. I mean, like back in 2013 with Counterparty, they started putting things into bare multi-sig,
which is why
that was the increased stage.
Jimmy, that's why op return must be expanded, because every other thing is work.
Well, so I'm saying that's what even back then.
Oh yes, sorry, yes, back then, yeah.
So saying like it's a nothing burger now. It's like. No, it was a big deal back then. Of course, it's going to be a big deal right now. Like it seemed kind of like dumb to assume that everyone forgot about like Bitcoin has a big memory.
I think from Core's perspective, it was always and as I said, like it's this long progression of closing the gap between relay and consensus that has been going on for years now, and this is just the latest step in that process. So it's like,
yeah, I feel like that argument came.
No. That's like, because like, look, I'm in these conversations and I'm part of what's driving them to converge the two, right? Like there is a movement to drive Core to converge relay and consensus, and op return is just the latest movement in that.
And Rearden, how much further do we have to go to actually merge? Is there going to be another one in 2 years that's even more controversial than this? Is anything else coming down the pipe here?
So the next one that I would say is at least loosely in progress right now is standardizing the annex. So the Taproot added the annex as signed witness data. Previous to that, all witness data was unsigned data. The annex is signed witness data. Libre Relay now relays the annex if it has a certain structure to it. It's not relayed by Core. So this is the latest. Right now, no one wants it really. So no one is pushing that forward and relaying a lot of them. If a bunch of people start using Libre Relay and the annex, then Core will once again be forced to converge relay and consensus.
So we're going to do this all over again.
Will anyone care though? No one knows what the annex is.
No. This is different. I mean, because the control block thing has been there for a while now, and that's always been there, right? Like as long as it's like a multiple.
No, the annex is not the control block.
Standard. Okay. No, I know, but the control block thing was there, and that's what sort of annex would also be doing, right? It's just that it's a little more efficient because you don't have to pad it to 32 byte,
and you don't have to do a setup transaction. You can put an annex scription with no setup. You just do it in the first transaction.
Oh, what is this? Somebody? Oh, fork monitor. Oh, okay. Should we keep an eye on this?
That'll just tell us if there are any signaling blocks for the new fork. So that's the place to watch for signaling.
When is that? What is signaling going to begin? February 1st?
I was wrong. It actually already began. I just got a message on a side channel that it started 2 months ago or something. But they're still on
Anybody
RCs,
signaled
but they
yet?
also have signaling started.
What has anybody signaled yet?
No one signaled yet.
It's been 2 months.
Well, I mean, there hasn't been a client, right? Like, so
Right. So it's weird that the code says
that you
it's gonna
could
start
signal
signaling.
without having a client. Like that would require like, I'm not even sure there's a setting that you can put in any of these clients to add a signal, right? Like,
So, so yeah,
did you
so
flip a
this,
version bit somewhere? Like, how do
so
you
Yeah,
do
there is
this,
a
it?
version bit.
so this
Yeah,
raises,
I know, but how do you flip it
You
in
have to
the
change the code.
client without like going deep into the code?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
like,
again, like I'm going to be raising the same question. This is the same question that I was raising during the 2017 fork shows. Does the other side know what the fuck they're doing?
I mean, I think Luke at least knows
Maybe.
what he's doing. I mean, like he did he of all the people that have run UASFs, I think Luke is probably the foremost expert just because he's done it before.
I know, but one guy. It's one guy.
Well, I mean, no one else has more experience than he does on that.
Luke,
Right?
Doesn't
Luke
matter. It's
knows
still
how to
one
run a
guy.
fork.
How
But
is
the
that
problem is that Luke isn't the
decentralization?
main
It's
dev
one
of
guy.
110.
Yeah, I mean, it's that Ohm guy, whatever his
Yeah.
name is, Dar or something.
Yeah, whoever Dathan Ohm is the main dev, and Luke is advising him, but Dathan's the one doing the actual
Right.
work.
So Bcash had more developers.
Sadly true.
Yeah, I have no idea who's contributing to it, but I mean, it was his proposal in the first place, so it's no surprise that he's the one doing the work, I guess. But I don't know. It's like don't sit on this and dismiss it so readily, guys. Like you don't know.
No,
right?
I'm not
Like
dismissing it. This is why we're doing the goddamn show. I would love to dismiss it, but this shit
No,
has
no,
been
no.
going
But the way you're
11
speaking
p.m.
about
Eastern
it is
time.
very sort of like dismissive, in that hey, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. No, it's not like that. There are technical people on that side, and I wouldn't be like it's not some monkey on a computer with an AI like code generator or something. It's somebody that is actually thinking about this, and don't underestimate them. This is how you get in trouble.
No, I'm not. I'm not underestimating. I'm just going to make it clear my views on it, because if this is why we're doing the shows. But you and I are slightly on different sides on this one, which makes these shows more
Well,
interesting.
I mean, I'm not sure I'm on a different side per se. I'm just saying, like, guys, like, you don't know what's gonna happen, and you know, like, and if it over like. The worst thing you can do is to be confident in a direction that's going to cost you money. That's all.
So the other thing that we should talk about that we haven't yet is the fact that multiple people, myself included, have been up for putting at least one full Bitcoin betting against the success of this fork, and nobody on the other side has taken us up on that bet. So
yeah, I think you'd have to give them pretty good odds, like 100 to 1 or something like that.
Yeah,
then
there's no weight.
But yeah. Otherwise, like it's gonna like until there's some momentum, and then it really is at 50-50, then somebody will take you on the bet. But at this point, like I don't think very many people are.
But I think you have to understand though that people on the this isn't going to happen side have I think we were able to source like dozens, if not more, of total Bitcoin that would have bet against it happening.
Right. So if you give them odds, then they'll take it. I'm sure if you give 100 to 1 odds, a lot of people would take it. Like the thing is the evenness.
But there's an important point here. It's a soft fork, which has the advantage in a hash war. And despite it being a soft fork that has the advantage in the soft war, the people that are saying that's not going to happen will bet at 50-50 right now, but nobody on the other side will bet at 50-50 right now.
Right, but I mean, you have to understand that 50-50 is not the correct odds, which is why no one's taking you on it. Like if you put it up on Kalshi, I'm sure it would be 99 to 1 or something. Right? So you have to give like 100 to 1 odds.
But that's what I'm saying is that they don't have any strength if they're not willing to bet at 50-50. They're weak. They don't believe in their own thing.
I mean,
that's what it means. That's what it means.
That's up to people that want to make the bet. I mean, if you give them 100 to 1, I bet you people will take it, right? Like that's the thing. But if
I have to give 100 to 1, then they don't believe in their own stuff.
No, it's not about belief. It's more about like probability. If you're making a bet, it's not like, hey, I'm declaring this so that I will do everything.
Do you believe this will succeed? And if you don't believe it will succeed, you'll need odds to take the bet. So the people who are involved in building this thing themselves do not believe it will succeed because they won't take a bet at even odds. They don't believe in it. That's what that means. That's the meaning of not taking the bet.
I mean that you're ascribing meaning to something that I don't think is necessarily true. So first of all, if you don't have one Bitcoin, then you obviously can't do it. If you made the bet lower, then maybe somebody will take you up. And
we offered
if you change the odds, then somebody would. No one will take this. The fact that somebody doesn't take it does not make you right.
For the record, I do not believe it will succeed, because if I thought it would succeed, I wouldn't bet on it succeeding. I would be selling my Bitcoin and cashing out, because again, to me, this fork's success is a 90 to 98% crash in the price of Bitcoin. So if I would be willing to bet on that to succeed, I would be exiting the market right now.
I would be willing to make a conditional bet on that if it succeeds, that it would be a 90% crash.
No, you are going to make a bet on that because you're going to hold on to your Bitcoin. So you are making a bet that it would succeed. I would not.
I would bet that it wouldn't do that. That would be the conditional bet.
I would be exiting. I would be cashing out into US dollars, right?
John, you said this before the 2017 stuff.
No, I did not. No, that's not. Well, no, 2017.
I said it too, right? Like months before, it's like, if we split, then I'm out, and neither of us did.
No. The position was, I'm willing to let it go to zero because we know I was confident that which side was going to win.
All right, so
it's all on video.
I gotta go find it
for all our videos. we gotta put those videos into AI and see who said what.
There's an article that you wrote commenting on my article where you said I would also get out. So I'll go look for it at some point. But all right. Anyway, but the thing is, like, the probabilities and stuff change all the time, and I'm just saying it might change, and don't be so dismissive at this point. Now, if you could get even odds on that, I think it's a very good bet to be making. And I have no doubt that there's a lot of people lining up to make that bet, but that's a sucker's bet. If you put it up on Kalshi and made it more fair, I bet you it would be 99 to 1. But there'd be a significant number of people that would be willing to take a flyer on a 100 to 1 bet.
All right, guys, time to wrap it up. Good show. And any closing thoughts? Any final comments? Did we miss anything? There weren't really that many questions.
I respect Rearden's sort of like gung-ho-ness about soft forks and aligning consensus and to relay policy. I think that's a very consistent position, and I respect that. I think going like he said, like he would have been for sort of that very first PR that eliminated the option altogether because of the position that he's taken, and I think that's admirable. Even if I don't agree with it, I think that's the sort of more courageous and consistent position to take, rather than sort of like this. Oh yeah, well we're still leaving it in, so I'm going to eliminate an argument that you have against my position or something like that. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I even if I don't agree, I understand where you're coming from and what you're trying to do, and how you think of Bitcoin, and I think it was valuable for our audience to see that.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you guys. I watched all those shows you guys did back in the fork wars before I was full-time Bitcoin, so it's kind of great to be on the show with you both. And it's been funny. I think the move that Core did with backing off a little bit there is exactly consistent with my issue, essentially, with them kind of being not having industry experience and being generally young folks. So I hope they can kind of develop a more of a backbone as an organization, even if that ends up meaning that Core has to be even replaced. Like, I want there to be a more principled position taken by Core. That'd be a really good thing. So, yeah, appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and I'm getting shit for not being a diehard hodler. Yeah, as long as Bitcoin stays Bitcoin, I'm a diehard hodler. But if it's going to become, a centralized thing controlled by two people, I have no interest in it anymore.
I mean, lots of assumptions built into that statement, which I won't argue at the moment. But yeah, there are other paths than the two that you keep seeming to think, and it's entirely possible that there are alternates, and who knows how things shake out. Like I said, none of us know the future, and you know that's what kind of makes this exciting. I don't know. We're all kind of curious to see what will happen. I guess September 1st is looking like sort of like that date. You might have to come out of retirement again, Tone, to do like a 14-hour stream or something on that day.
All right. No, we'll get. I don't think this thing is going to make it. I don't think September 1st is going to. I think this thing is going to die way before that, and the price of Bitcoin will rise because this thing died. But we're gonna bring you another show hopefully this week. Maybe we'll get a good guest in El Salvador for Plan B. Jimmy, check out the list of speakers and see who we can interview live on this topic as well. And
Adam's gonna be there, so but he's already been on the show.
He's already been on the show. I mean, maybe Nick Szabo, but I don't know if he's there. If he's there, maybe we can grab him. I do want to bring.
Think he's gonna be there. Yeah.
I do want to bring someone from Knots. Like I said, Matthew Crowder turned us down. Ugly Old Gold's been writing a million articles on this. That's a big maybe.
I haven't read anything about it. He keeps tagging me, so it's like, I don't want to read it because he's written so much. I don't want to catch up.
And again, this is why I'm tempted to bring him on the show, let him talk for 30 minutes and just explain all the 85 articles he's already written. But he only has like 20 minutes to do so. And who else are options? Like again, Nick
Have you tried to get Chris Gita?
Who?
Guida might be good. Yeah, he's like in that matrix of CTV and core versus Knots. He's in the pro CTV but Knots camp, which is pro CTV with Rearden, but like on the opposite sides on the other.
Anyway, guys, we will
be interesting.
We will try to bring another, die-hard pro Knots person.
Yeah, Guida might work.
Guida might work.
He's technical. He knows. He's the creator of Garbage Man, among other things. So
Guida might work, and I do have one more guest that I really want to bring on. So maybe later this week, Jimmy knows who that is, and after that, we'll see where it goes. All right. Maybe the show will continue into September. We will play it by ear. All right. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Rearden, thank you so much for joining us. And see you all on the next one, guys.
Take care.
Bye.